Alright, it's time to get the pitchforks and keyboards out, because the Athlete of the Year selections have officially gone underway and will be officially announced in the coming days. I feel like we say this a lot of years for this sport, but I do think this year in particular was by far one of the most unique and impressive in terms of the types of performances and records set. Some were met with uncontested praise and excitement, while others seemed to have a cloud hovering above them from uneducated fans that don't understand how any elite sport works at the top level in the first place. Now, snarky comments aside, I figured it'd be actually fun to take a gander and properly assess who the best athletes were this year within their areas of the sport, and then conclude who I think had the best seasons across all of them, and also to just take an opportunity to celebrate what a fantastic year track and field was as we gear up for the upcoming 2025 season. Let's start off with the field side of things. I think the obvious choice this year for women's field is Ukraine's Yaroslava Mahuchik. Ever since her breakout performance in 2019, she's been a straight-up menace in the event, and given how young she was at the 2019 World Championships, she seemed like a genuine candidate to dethrone the world record of 2.09, a Soviet-era mark from well over 3 decades back that remained as such for somewhat obvious reasons. Mahuchik's 2024 season started off pretty solid by her standards, clearing 204 as early as January, but would surprisingly finish second at World Indoors to Australia's Nicola Olieslagers. At the soon-to-be Olympic track in Paris a few months out from the games though, she had the clearance of a lifetime getting over 210, erasing the near 37-year drought the record suffered, and also soared above her old personal best by 4 centimeters too, which is a 2% increase. Unsurprisingly, she did get the gold medal in Paris, won her next 3 post-Olympic competitions, and pretty solidly had the best women's field season this year. With that said, I will give my close second and third choices as well. USA's Valerie Allman looked so consistent throughout the whole year, threw great marks from front to back, won her second Olympic gold medal in a row, and went entirely undefeated too. Belgium's Nafi Sham honestly ties Allman for what it's worth as a second choice. Not only did she put together 2 of her best heptathlon performances this year, but claimed her third gold medal in a row to easily cement herself as the best in the event for this century. For the men's field, there's just objectively one good choice here, as while I am a huge Ryan Krauser fan, I mean, come on. It just straight up goes to Mondo. Listen, if I did this type of video for the 2023 season, I probably would have given the edge to Krauser given how absurd his season was. Honestly, I might have put him even as the favorite across any athlete in general that year. For this year, however, Mondo didn't let up at all for the Olympic season. Of course, he went entirely undefeated, broke his own world record 3 more times, and in poetic fashion made one of these happen at no other than the Paris Olympics. After clearing 626 in Poland, Mondo officially occupies all of the top 10 marks on the all-time list, making this the first time anyone has done so across any event in the modern era of the sport. These world records are also worth an obscene amount of points on the IAAF scale, which for those who aren't familiar with it, equate to around these marks across other events. And before you say anything, yes, this point system is generally considered to be a very valid way to compare marks across events. Mondo is genuinely that good at what he does relative to almost any other existing athlete out there. But let's not get too carried away here and pivot towards the next group of athletes. Women's track fans were treated with a stellar year of phenomenal performances. With that said though, there are only 3 realistic contenders for Athlete of the Year within this category, and that's this trio right here. Why? For starters, they consistently put up stellar marks across their disciplines, they all also set a world record at some point, and outside of Faith Kipyegon's second place 5,000 meter finish at the Olympics, they have not lost a single race across all 3 of them. As hard as it is to say this, Faith is actually my third pick here. Her 1500s this year were obscenely high level across the board, and the fact that she broke the world record at age 30 is basically unheard of for this event. She looked flawless at the Olympics in the event as well, but unfortunately she was bested by her compatriot, Beatrice Chebet, in the Olympics, which makes it a bit harder for me to consider her a contender for the best in this category. Make no mistake though, this season was amazing for her, and the fact that she now possesses 3 separate Olympic golds in the 1500 is a feat like chums that we honestly might not see again in the event for decades and decades to come. In second-ish, or at the very least an obscenely close first place choice, I have to go with Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone. Okay, so I know how rabid her fans can get, so I'm gonna be careful with my words here, even though they're probably pissed I'm not putting her as the undisputed best in this category already. Listen, I can only rate an athlete's overall year so highly when they only compete 2 or 3 times in their main discipline, even though her event is something she could very well compete in double or even more times than that. 50-65 and 50-37 are otherworldly marks on their own and do triumph over anything Chebet or Kipyegon has done in terms of raw skill. She also ran some solid marks in the 2 and Open 4, but her sporadic racing style in her main event makes it a bit difficult to give her a robust analysis on her season, even if these 2 races are jaw-dropping beyond belief. She's still a one-of-a-kind athlete, still far and beyond the GOAT in this event, and just the sport in general, but let me make a case on why I think Chebet simply had the better season by the slightest amount, and no, it's not because of my distance running bias, but also it's probably because of my distance running bias. Kenya's Beatrice Chebet is a name I only started hearing of more often after her win against Letesenbet at the 2023 World Cross Country Championships. She not only developed this insane kick at the end of races, but quickly became a time trial mastermind on top of that, making her a deadly force going into the Olympic year. This year, Chebet opened up her season with a win at the World Cross Country Championships again, and took a slightly more reserved approach in terms of racing volume since she'd be doing the 5,000, 10,000 meter double in Paris. For the 10,000 meter trials though, the race was interestingly paced at world record pace. But the thing was, Chebet would actually pull away even further from this tempo throughout, ultimately becoming the first woman to go under 29 minutes, and really just destroying the world record in the process. Then at the Olympics, she had to go up against Kipyegon in the 5,000, who was the defending world champion, and would find a way to outsprint the 1,500 meter GOAT out of all people in the last 100 to claim the title. Then in the 10,000, she would cleanly snag the gold there as well, becoming the first woman in history to complete what I like to call the Bekele Triple, a gold in the World Cross Country Championships, then golds in the Olympic 5,000 and 10,000. The fact that she did all of this with a world record in the 10,000, some insane 5,000 meter marks, and of course an undefeated season, makes this, in my opinion, arguably the greatest women's distance running season of all time and the best within the track category this year. Comparatively speaking, the men's side wasn't as enthralling, but there was some good stuff, and I think you can make the argument between these 2 guys pretty well. I don't know what's up with top American 400 meter hurdlers though, but they don't really seem to like racing that often, even in non-Olympic years. With that said, Rai Benjamin really put his foot down this time around. He threw up 4 separate 1,300 meter point marks in his discipline, which is the only track athlete to do so this year, and I think ever? Okay, I'm literally putting this in the script after I finish writing it, and I'm actually certain he's the only athlete to do this ever. Even Bolt hasn't done this, so yeah, that's pretty crazy. Benjamin technically rewrote history, and I'm just realizing this now. Anyways, he also beat Dos Santos and Warholm in Monaco, which was effectively the Olympic 0.5, and then returned to Paris to do it all again, with an insane time of 46.46. He also split a gnarly leg in the 4x4 as well, to help the US win there, making that 5 super elite performances in a single season, despite not racing all that much. Now, Jakob did of course have a fantastic season as well, but it was kind of plagued with injury for the first few months, and even then was a little rocky at other points as well. He looked shaky at the pre-classic mile and even in Oslo, but did quickly regain his footing in Monaco, running 3:26.73 for the European record. But then he got walloped in the 1,500 meter final at the Olympics after going out in near world record pace, but he did return to the 5,000 for a gold there, still going home with some pretty sick hardware. Now, his 3,000 meter world record he set in Poland genuinely might be the greatest men's distance running record of all time, and is certainly more impressive than his 5,000 meter gold medal, as he not only beat Daniel Coleman's prolific mark of 7:20.69, but I mean, he eviscerated it by a few seconds, even to the point where Jakob was surprised at his own brilliance for once. He did end up losing again in Zurich in the 15, and also blundered his half marathon debut by trying to do it 2 days after his Diamond League final win. So with that said, I do feel like I have to give the title over to Benjamin, pretty solidly I might add. His season was just insane and is now what I realize, downright historical. So that's pretty awesome too. I don't know why they don't just call this category the Rhodes one, but anyways, the women's Rhodes housed arguably the greatest feats of endurance the sport has ever seen in the last few decades, probably ever honestly. Now, with that said, we are not, and I mean we're not, going to make this a video about which performance is more sketchy than the other, not because most of you don't know what you're talking about, but mainly because most of you don't know what you're talking about. Agnes Jebet-Njegić had a solid 2023 season with some notably good performances on the roads, but this year really proved that the asphalt is truly her home. Her 10K record in Valencia is not only faster than the track record, but she also broke the 5K record en route to her 10K one as well, which, I mean, I don't think I need to research this. It's definitely something that has never happened before. Now, to be fair, the road 5K isn't as competitive as the track, but like, come on, let's be real here. A 14-13 split into 10K is still completely unreal and unheard of, and would still be a top 10 all-time mark on its own on the track. She also won the Kenyan cross-country trials and placed 5th at the World Championships, which were solid too, and just recently had recorded a 63.04 in the half in no other than Valencia again, which is perhaps a teaser towards what may be the start of an early half or full marathon career. Whatever it is, I'm actually pretty excited for it because at just 23 years old, the potential is terrifyingly present here. Sifan Hassan is an interesting case because, on paper, these performances aren't that crazy on their own, especially since she got bested in Tokyo by a notable gap. However, once the Olympics rolled around, her win in the marathon when contextualized is something that can only be compared to Zatopek's marathon win in 1952, where he did it off of winning the 5,000 and 10,000 beforehand. While Hassan got bronze medals in the 5 and 10,000 in comparison, it would be criminal to not make the clarification that running as a sport is infinitely more optimized and competitive nowadays, that for someone like her to just waltz into the Olympics, run 2 separate races in the 5,000, a final in the 10,000, and then to just wake up a few days later and be like, hey, I'm gonna win the marathon against the former world record holder? I mean, this performance just exudes dominance and range in every fashion. Because even if Hassan's season was shaky all the way up until the Olympics, she made her last race by every metric a truly special one, and will probably be remembered as the craziest way to win an Olympic marathon ever, and really just a one-of-a-kind Olympic showing during an era where everyone is just insane at the sport now. Looking at Ruth Chepngetij's history as a runner, her uniquely dense schedule in the late 2010s seemed like a smart way to build her name in the distance running world, while also being able to win a sizable amount of cash by entering mid to highish level half marathon and 10K races. Hell, she even found a way to sneak a marathon or two in there. And even though this seems like a quantity over quality case, her marathon wins in particular were done on anything but soft fields. One was the World Championships in 2019, and the other was a win in Dubai that was at the time a number 3 all-time mark. After the pandemic, however, it seemed like she started taking the marathon more seriously, but even then maintained a respectfully voluminous racing schedule. She won Chicago in 2021 and 2022, also had wins in the Nagoya marathons, got second in Chicago in 2023, and after a very shaky performance in London, she came back to Chicago for the 4th time and performed the single greatest feat of running history since Usain Bolt's sprinting marks back in the 2000s. This sub 210 is not just the equivalent of Kipchoge's Ineos 159 performance, it's even better than that. And to do it in seemingly suboptimal conditions, on a legal course, and with a hilariously aggressive start, make this a race that still blows my mind the more I revisit it. I have to hand this title off to Chepngetij. I mean, like, how do you top this? It's the highest rated mark set across any event in the last 15 years. Hassan is an easy second choice for me, but I don't know, I just don't see a world where anything on the roads even comes close to this performance. Even if we're accounting super shoes, doping, pacing, this mark is absurd no matter what lens you look at it through. And with the rise of other talents, I honestly could see this record being threatened relatively soon, given athletes seem to be unafraid of taking races out this hard now. And performances like this obviously remind us that there are still hyper talents and hyper responders knocking at the door when the right training and races line up for them. Now, after all of that, the men's road scene is going to feel pretty absent this year in comparison, and honestly, there really isn't a lot I have to comment on about it, but if I had to pick, I think Ethiopia's Tamarat Tola is a fairly safe one here. He actually wasn't even supposed to run at the Olympics given he DNF'd in London, which meant he didn't have a completed marathon race to work with at all. Tola showed up when it mattered, and not only won his first Olympic gold, but also broke the Olympic record at the brutally hilly Paris course out of all venues, in hot conditions on top of that. Kejelcha could also be argued as well for this title given he just broke the half marathon world record, so I wouldn't hesitate to put him winning this category either if you really value this record. Now, from what I understand, they will actually be doing an overall best athlete of the year on the men's and women's side. They're not just going to keep it with the separated categories and call it a day like they did last year for whatever reason. So, with all of this in mind and everything I've said thus far, my men's pick is Mondo Duplantis. Objectively speaking, he's had the best season by far, possibly the best season of all time across any event in the sport, honestly. I mean, Bolt's 2009 would probably be first, but Mondo he's a damn close second place. Now, on the women's side, this is honestly a tough one for me, but I'm gonna have to go with Beatrice Chebet. Picking Chebet is tough for me, honestly, because especially keeping in mind Cheptetish's marathon performance and McLaughlin Lavroni's double world record performances paired with her 4x4 leg. But I just think the amount of times Chebet came out and destroyed the competition, outsprinted the 1500 meter GOAT in the 5000, and pulled off the triple gold that only the official GOAT of distance running as a whole, Kenenisa Bekele, has only done, is just enough to convince me that she had the better year, and arguably the best distance running season of all time for women. I don't think she's a clear favorite. You can truly juggle a couple women around for this title, because the women's side of the sport was just mind-blowing from front to back. Obviously, these are just my picks, as while I'm trying to be as objectively sound as possible with them, there's so many factors that could be thrown around when trying to assess an athlete's best season, so I'm curious what you guys think. Also, this is just for fun. Please be somewhat civil in the comments. I know how these types of videos can get when even the slightest disagreements come about, especially when it reaches a more mainstream audience. But anyways, I'll see you all in whatever video I upload next, and take care.